What is up, everyone? Today's video I'm going to be talking about something that people have been talking about on Twitter recently, which is the fact that it's really hard to be a #1 player in the world in Smash Ultimate right now if you don't live in Japan, due to the way that Japan has a lot of A, S, S+, and P tier tournaments because of their basically, their high rankings, and it's very, very difficult to be the #1 player in the world if you don't live in Japan. It's part of the reason why Akola was #1 last year, is he had access to more tournaments than most of the other people for relatively little price, given the fact that you can take a train in Japan and it's not the price of an airplane. And then if you want to go from the United States or Mexico or something to Japan, it's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And technically that is true, but I want to talk about how ridiculous of a statement that is. I know that a lot of people are talking about this. I don't know if some people are talking about it sarcastically, and I'm not going to bring up any particular tweets because I don't want to throw any one person under the bus, but this is a crazy statement. One thing I will bring up in particular is Levin brought up the hypocrisy of this, because this is the second time in history that we have a player that isn't from North America that is #1 on whatever official ranking that is, the other player being Armada, being the #1 Melee player. And again, it is ridiculous how much effort Armada had to put in order to maintain #1, because he didn't have any European majors. Maybe there was one a year for the SSBM rank done by like Melee It On Me. He had to come to the United States and spend thousands and thousands of dollars every single time and, deal with jet lag and all that type of stuff. And it was incredibly difficult for him, and he did it kind of in spite of that. For the first time in a not Melee game, the #1 player isn't a North American player. There are a ton of Japanese players in the rankings. The Japanese players all do very well when they travel anywhere, whether it's just in Japan, whether they go to the other places in East Asia, whether it's China or Korea or anywhere like that. The Philippines, I'm pretty sure, has a decently sized tournament every once in a while. And it's just crazy the fact that for the first time ever, there are a lot of tournaments that are super highly ranked somewhere not in North America. There has been a long history of basically every region other than North America being snubbed, especially dating back to Smash 4, just because people were like, oh, well, the Japanese players aren't that amazing, and so they wouldn't be, have highly tiered tournaments, so they wouldn't count much for the PGR at that time, or whatever ranking system it was, which means that there wouldn't be a lot of Japanese players on the ranking system, which means that the tournaments wouldn't be valued very highly, which means that not a lot of people would get onto the PGR unless they traveled to North America. Someone like Abadongo, like Renai, like Komori Kiri. Basically, most of the players that were on the PGR in Smash 4 especially were players that traveled to North America frequently because there was no other way to get on a ranking system. And even, in line with this, there were very few European players on the PGR because not a lot of Europeans traveled to the United States, and especially like Wario was bad in that game, so Gluto wasn't even a super top player because he played a bottom 10 or 15 character. There were very few Europeans that were considered super, super good. The main one obviously being Mr. R. He was very highly ranked, but also he would live in SoCal for months at a time. He would constantly go to North American tournaments, and the seasons that he couldn't go to a bunch of North American tournaments, he wasn't as highly ranked, because all of the tournaments that were good or highly ranked or highly, given a lot of weight in these type of, ranking systems were all in the United States. Of course, is traveling in the United States different than traveling in Japan? Yeah, that's the benefit of, playing in Japan. Finally, the Japanese players have as many people on the rankings as they kind of deserve, because, spoiler alert, Japan has a lot of amazing players, more probably high player density than any other continent or country in the, any country, but also just you can group in all of North America. The amount of amazing players there are ridiculous, which is why when most players go to Japan, they get bodied when they, do well in North America. And it's why almost every single time a Japanese player comes to the United States, they do well or perform an upset, right? We've had Zachary do amazing, we have T, we have Shutone, we have Akola, who just won SmashCon, we had even LY, who beat Spargo at Super Smash Con and got 25th or something like that. We've had Neo, who got top 5 at SmashCon, and that was his first time in the United States, I'm pretty sure. Ken has won a major here, Proto wins majors here, and then does poorly in Japan because Japan is simply harder to succeed in. So finally, there are a lot of Japanese players who are doing well in Japan, and they're getting what they deserve for it, which is very high rankings. Now you have players like Mia and Yoshidora be very highly ranked, mostly for doing well in Japan, although Spargo Mia has come over to the United States and done well. Obviously, he got 3rd at SmashCon. He got 5th at Battle of BC, which I know isn't the United States, it's Canada. And, you know, he's done well. Yoshidora got top 8 at Battle of BC. There are a lot of players that just do consistently well, you know, whether they are from Japan and they come over here, or it's just players in Japan staying in Japan, or it's players in Japan like T and Shootone going to Europe and doing well. Japan is just the strongest region right now. And again, yes, is traveling to Japan very expensive? Yeah, obviously it's a couple $1,000s when you take into account like hotels and flights and like, you know, just general travel costs and stuff like that. But it's the same way the other way around, and unless you are literally like Akola or Mia, you're not really making the money back. So even though you can't make money at a Japanese Smash tournament because of their laws with gambling, you're not really making your money back anyway, unless you're literally like a top 10 type player who also does very well when you go to Japan, or, you know, in the other way, a very top player that does well when they come to North America. Yes, do I feel bad for, like, specifically Spargo, right? He went to Japan one time for one tournament, won the event, had an amazing record with basically all the top Japanese players, but didn't perform well enough at a couple of events, or just Akola had more, essentially, results other than the losing to Spargo. He won more tournaments. He was able to beat more players just because he was able to go to more super highly ranked tournaments. Yes, that is the thing that kind of put Akola into the #1 spot, as well as that crazy losers run at Smash Ultimate Summit. So I actually forgot about when I was talking about the Leo versus Akola video. If you didn't check that out, you can check it up right about at this card here. I actually forgot about that in his actual losers run where he lost at 9th place. You know, it's really insane to me that people are like, oh man, it's so hard to not be a Japanese player right now, and literally Europe is just like looking at this conversation being like, yeah, it's hard to be not an American. This is the first time you've ever felt this, huh? And I totally understand people's frustrations when they see North American players complain about it, because North America has been the epicenter of Smash forever, even when Armada was the #1 player in Melee for multiple years, or like, you know, in the top 2 discussion with like him and Hungrybox. The center of Smash was still North America. Armada just came to North America a lot. So yeah, Japan absolutely deserves, like the Japanese scene absolutely deserves to be the center right now, because they have a ton of amazing players. They have a very healthy community. There's a ton of majors there all the time. Everyone's kind of entering. It doesn't seem like the Japanese players are tired of the game. They have a very healthy mindset. I'm sure that maybe that has something to do with, you know, them not wanting to ban Steve, but I'm not 100% sure. Their meta is really diverse with a ton of crazy characters. Like Banjo just got top 8 at one of their majors there, and that's the first Banjo top 8 since Tweak did it at Glitch 7, which is kind of insane. There's just a ton of variety there, a ton of amazing players. And then again, when these top players travel to the United States, or travel to North America, or travel to Europe, whether it's again Akola, Mia, Yoshidora, Shootone, Kamame, you know, Zachary when he decides to travel, Proto Banham, like the amount of players that travel from Japan to the United States and do amazingly well are really high. When you look at, I mean, I remember there was one tournament, I forget what it was called, it was a 2GG tournament in like an August time, and I think 5 or 6 Japanese players showed up, and like 5 of them were in top 8, and the top 4 was all Japan. It was like Kome, Kamame, Ken, and like someone else. And they all got top 4, and people were like, oh damn, like they just kind of beat our ass. And that's kind of how it is most of the time. Like Leo sometimes defends, Spargo sometimes defends, you know, Light sometimes defends like he did at one of the glitches. But for the most part, like when Japanese players come to the United States, they're almost always in top 8, like pretty consistently, most of the roster that shows up. So that is, in my opinion, indicative of the fact that Japan is the strongest scene right now. When Japan goes anywhere, they win. When Japan stays in Japan, they win. When Japan stays in Japan, they defend from the outsiders. The only 2 that have ever, like I guess the only one that's ever won a major in Japan over Japan is Spargo. That's the only player that has ever done that ever. At least in Smash Ultimate. Every other top player that has gone there has done, I mean, there have been players that done well, right? You know, Dabuz got top 8 at Kagedibi, Riddle's got like top 2, I think, at Delta, losing to Mia, but like, it's very rare for non-Japanese players to win on Japanese soil, whereas it's a lot more common that Japanese players win on American soil, or Canadian soil, or Mexican soil. So yeah, just something to think about. Just Japan's really good right now, and if you want to complain about the ranking system, to me, that's fucking crazy, because Japan also just travels travels everywhere and does well wherever they go, so they're going to get more people that are worth points, which means that the tournaments that have them are going to be ranked higher. That's just kind of how it works. Whereas people in fucking America are like, oh, this tournament is a B tier tournament, even though I've had very good experiences there and I very much enjoyed the tournament, it's not worth it to go to because it's not worth the rankings. Whereas like if the people that have that mentality go to the tournament will be worth more, and then it will be a better tournament and worth, you know, more when it comes to the ranking systems. And then I feel like people just don't understand that. Where like if you want to go to a tournament because you want to play or you want to have a better shot at the rankings, winning a ton of B tiers is important, but maybe those B tiers will become B pluses or A's or A pluses or whatever, you know, just you can attend the tournaments without thinking of how is it going to impact your ranking. And of course, is it about money? Absolutely. Sure, if it's about money, you know, you're trying to go to the biggest tournament, you know, in the month, obviously that is very different. But, you know, I feel like the obsession with how valuable a tournament is kind of what's pushing North America back in terms of the amount of people traveling, the amount of people consistently going to all these events. Like I know a ton of people didn't go to Shine or aren't going to Big House because they're like, oh, well, it's not an S tier tournament, so like, is it even a major? When like Big House has been very established, Shine was very established, and it's very interesting to see, I guess. And yeah, that's my take on that. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Of course, I'm very interested. Of course, I do like these talking videos, so I will see you all next time.